And now your host, Richard Thomas.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Miracle. We're here at Britain's National Maritime Museum for a special edition of Miracles on the High Seas. This museum houses one of the world's most important collections of sailing history, and we're going to add to that collection with some remarkable stories of our own. We begin with one of the most grueling sailboat races in the world, the Vendee Globe, an event that tests the limits of man's strength, courage, and faith. The Vendee Globe is an annual 4-month-long round-the-world race which passes through the Southern Ocean surrounding Antarctica, considered to be one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Hurricane-force winds and waves the size of houses lash out against anything that gets in their way. It's a grueling challenge and a demanding job for a full crew, and yet there are some who choose to race alone. One of these intrepid sailors is Pete Goss, a former Royal Marine.
I wanted to do the Vendee because it was the ultimate challenge. It is a very hard race. Statistically, only 50% of the fleet would finish it. But I had no fear at all. I couldn't wait to go. And I was starting to fulfill a 10-year dream. What a lucky person.
The race began off the coast of France. Among the contestants, 28-year-old Frenchman Raphael Dinelli, the youngest of the 16 starters. For his first solo race around the world, Raphael had the full support of his wife, Virginie.
I gave up everything to help him because I wanted to share it with him. We always shared everything, so it's a family project.
Pete Goss would be keeping a video diary chronicling his adventures.
You film what you're doing and you talk to it and how you feel and so on. And it actually becomes a friend. You start talking to this bloody piece of equipment.
Well, as you can see, today is a American Vendee.
There's a lot of things to be done. You have to cook, clean, look after yourself. You have to do a lot of maintenance. That takes a lot of your time up. And then, of course, just physically sailing the boat, getting on deck, changing sails. You have to be fit and you have to be motivated.
The first few weeks of the race took the boat south toward the equator.
Well, here we are. Look at that. Run down the boom, nice sunny day. And hey-ho diddly, there's the competition. Fantastic.
Raphael Dinelli was keeping up with the pack, but already experiencing difficulties. Faxes received by his wife indicated that his boat, the Algimus, was having problems with its ballast tank.
Communications nowadays are very, very sophisticated, and you can send a fax anywhere in the world and people can fax you. We also have a form of safety communication, what we call an EPIRB, and it's a sealed unit. It's very, very rugged, and you can flick a switch and a mayday and a position goes out. So if everything goes down, you're able to say, I'm in trouble, I need help, and this is where I am.
At the moment, the leaders, Aquitaine Innovation is here.
By then, the race had split into two groups, and we were in the group further behind.
And we are, we're here.
Nothing like a bit of competition.
Raphael's next communication revealed that on December 21st, Pete Goss had changed course and passed the Algimus, heading 54 degrees south into iceberg territory.
The sea temperature is down to 0 degrees, and it's very cold. I've got driving snow on deck.
The Southern Ocean represents the worst part of any round-the-world trip because that is where you get these very vicious storms. It was very intimidating. The wind went straight up to 50, 60 knots. The slowest I could make the boat go was 28, 30 knots, so it was all on the edge of control. I checked the boat, I knew everything was okay, there was nothing more I could do. And I just felt uncomfortable. I had this awful premonition coming. which was really quite unpleasant.
On board the Algimus, Raphael was also fighting against the approaching storm when suddenly his boat was hit by a 30-foot wave, turning it upside down. The boat had been designed to right itself automatically, but when that didn't happen, Raphael quickly sent an SOS.
RCC Australia, good evening.
The signal was received in France itself, in Europe, and relayed to us from the Maritime Rescue Centre.
What's been happening, Ian?
There's a yacht named Algimus, one person on board who's named Denali.
Raphael was approximately 1,200 miles southwest of Fremantle, Western Australia. This situation posed a real problem. The nearest merchant ship was 34 hours away, so we issued a mayday to see if there was any shipping in the area which could lend immediate assistance to that vessel.
The signal was picked up by Pete's communications system.
I called up the message and it was a mayday. And the definition of that is that it's a life-threatening situation. I never thought it would be one of the competitors. I don't know why. And then the alarm went again, which basically said, Raphael is in trouble. What's your position and what's your situation? The problem was I was 160 miles from Raphael, but I was downwind. I would have to turn around and take this boat back into what were pretty horrific conditions, and it wasn't designed for it.
At 065.
I had a real concern that if Pete didn't turn back into those conditions, we may have lost Raphael.
42 east.
It was Pete or bust.
I sat down and I just thought through all the ramifications and the risks involved, and you think of your family and all the rest of it. But to me, I'm sure it's different with everyone. It was just flashed up like a signpost. You either stand by your principles or you don't. So when I first turned the boat round, I just watched the guardrails go under and the spreaders, touch the water. I found that as waves were hitting the boat, I was being thrown around and was starting to get injured. I wasn't in control of the situation by then. The storm had taken control of events. I had to tie myself into the bunk in around the corner, so I was being thrown around. If I was having troubles on the boat, how could he possibly be surviving, really?
The remarkable conclusion when It's a Miracle returns.
Coming up, Pete's search continues with some help from the air.
It was a race against time, because you can only survive for so long in those conditions. We had to find him as quickly as possible.
He could have been sunk, he could be dead. We just didn't know at that stage.
What I was really hungry for was information. I just wanted his position. I would get a position roughly every 2 hours would come in, so I knew effectively where I was going.
But time was running out for Raphael. His boat had endured a continuous pounding by giant waves and was sinking fast. Worse still, during the night, his life raft had been swept overboard, leaving him with no means of escape.
It was a race against time, because you can only survive for so long in those conditions. We had to find him as quickly as possible.
As an added precaution, rescue coordinators in Australia sent a surveillance plane loaded with life rafts and supplies to search for the sinking boat. After flying for several hours, the rescue aircraft reached the search area, nearly a full day after Raphael had capsized.
Our thinking was that he could have been sunk, he could be dead. We just didn't know at that stage.
Visibility was about half a mile to a mile in the area, and we're flying in and we couldn't see anything.
We had observers in several observer stations back through the aeroplane, looking out the windows, searching.
I was in the left-hand seat. The engineer was between us. So we're looking. And then, suddenly...
I didn't know what I was seeing. I just saw a dark outline of something sticking out of the water.
Yeah, there is something in the water.
We started getting some pretty excited calls from other guys in the aeroplane. Holy cow, there's a guy sitting down on the deck of that yacht.
There was this guy just waving, just waving. That's pretty amazing. The aircraft's not designed to rescue people. We can drop them safety equipment and life rafts and food and so on, but we can't actually pick them up.
Stand by, 10 seconds.
The crew would attempt to drop the life raft as close to Raphael as possible. Miraculously, it came within yards of his boat, close enough that he was able to grab it in spite of the terrible conditions. He quickly attached it to the boat as an anchor and jumped inside.
We had to leave him at that point and go and find Peter and relay the information to him.
I was on deck repairing the boat, having got through the night, when I heard the aeroplane.
Rescue aircraft, rescue aircraft.
This is Mike Victor, Foxtrot Zulu 8. Do you receive me, over?
This is Rescue 251, receiving you loud and clear, over.
Rescue 251.
Well, no, it's just great to hear a voice. Listen, I need as much information as possible.
And that was great. That's the first time I'd spoken to someone for over a month.
Now, is there anybody else involved in the rescue?
No, sir, we're pinning our hopes on you.
By then I was getting pretty tired and pretty numb, but it added to my resolve, I think.
All right, brilliant. Well, best get on then. Take care. Happy Christmas.
Everyone's just going, did he just wish us Merry Christmas? It was like, this guy's just amazing.
Roger, and Merry Christmas to you, sir.
By now, the plane had only enough fuel to return to land, and so it headed home. Within hours, photographs of Raphael taken from the rescue plane were seen around the world.
When we saw the picture the day after in the newspaper, we all realized that he was really in big trouble.
Trapped on the life raft in the turbulent seas, Raphael's muscles began to cramp up. He had not eaten or slept since his boat first capsized days earlier.
I got back to his vicinity at about midnight on the second night. I was just questioning whether he would be alive and what would I tell his wife and child. I would box search an area, and then 2 hours later another position would come through and I would search that area, and then another position would come through, and it was really looking for a needle in a haystack. Because of the drift, the position would move, and it might only move a quarter of a mile, but in those conditions it just as well be 100 miles. I could feel his presence. I knew he was there, but I couldn't find him. I got so tired that I couldn't think straight. And I got a position in, and I plotted it, and it put him 60 miles away, and it was absolutely crushing. And I thought, hang on, that can't be possible. And I went on deck. It's the first time I was grateful the Southern Ocean was cold, so I just got a bucket of water and stuck my head in it, and got some fresh air and went back down and replotted the position, and I got 1 degree out, which is 60 miles. Probably I was within a 14-mile radius, so I was never more than 7 miles away from him.
In an attempt to aid his search, a second Australian Air Force plane took off 3 hours before daybreak, hoping to reach the area at first light.
We saw our primary role then was to get Peter to the life raft in the quickest possible manner and ensure Raphael was rescued.
We have him visual, 3 miles from your position. We've got smoke flares to guide you in.
Foxtrot Zulu 8.
It was great to have somebody else there, and the key with them is they had a bird's eye view of the area. In this just great greyness, the sea is grey, the sky is grey. I still couldn't see him, although I was very close.
To help Pete get his bearings, the rescue plane flew above Raphael's life raft and flashed its landing lights.
And that gave me something concrete, and I took a quick compass bearing on it, and then I could sail in on that.
This is a rescue 252, 400 yards, over.
The seas were quite big, and it was incredible how close he was before I could see him.
With the life raft now in sight, Pete lowered his sails and maneuvered his boat into position.
The next phase was to get him on the boat. That's a high-risk part of the exercise.
And it was made even riskier by the rough seas and Raphael's exhausted condition.
Once he was clipped to the boat, I knew I had him then. All I could see was his eyes. I'll never forget his eyes and the depth of emotion and gratitude.
The word from Peter was basically that Raphael was happy, a little bit cold in places. So we were pretty happy with the situation then.
I dragged him into the cockpit, pulled his hood off, and his feet were in agony, but he was lucid, and he said thanks, and he was okay. I made a cup of tea with lots and lots of sugar in it and started to get fluids in him. I just wanted to go to sleep, so I was absolutely exhausted.
Quand le bateau capsized.
The trouble is they get on a survivor's high, and he was bloody rabbiting away. I couldn't shut him up, and because he was talking in French, and I couldn't understand him. But it was the beginning of a great friendship.
With Raphael safely on board, Pete headed for Hobart, Australia, 10 days away. Already, the rescue was making headlines around the world.
Do you feel like a hero?
In Hobart, Pete bid Raphael farewell and headed back out to sea to rejoin the race.
And I felt really quite vulnerable, and it was the first time on the race that I felt lonely, really. And it took a lot of resolve to head back down into the Southern Ocean.
2.5 months later, Pete finished the Vendee Globe, and Raphael Dinelli was there to welcome him home.
I was unaware of the extent of the interest in the rescue until the finish, and apparently there was 150,000 people there, which was just incredible.
In June of 1997, Pete Goss was awarded the Légion d'honneur, France's highest civilian honor.
The Légion d'honneur really touched me. It came from France and it came from the heart. It was absolutely brilliant.
And it was absolutely deserved, for if Pete Goss had not turned back and sailed to Raphael's rescue, it is doubtful that he would have survived. There was no one else in the area capable of reaching him, and Pete's courage and determination were the stuff of miracles. As the two men sailed together for 10 days back to land, Raphael Dinelli realized what a special person his guardian angel was.
In 10 days, if I know Pete perhaps 20 years, I think Pete is a good friend for all my life.
Not long after this story happened, Pete Goss and Raphael Dinelli joined forces as a two-man crew in a successful race across the Atlantic. But Raphael still hopes that one day he'll conquer the Southern Ocean. You've probably all heard stories of people cast adrift on the ocean who float for days and nights before being rescued. But what would you say to 4 months on the open sea in a small dinghy, surviving only on rainwater and the food you can catch? Well, you know what we'd say. It's a miracle. In April of 1973, Maurice and Marilyn Bailey set off in a 33-foot sloop from England to New Zealand. 7 months later, they passed through the Panama Canal and into the South Pacific.
And we were sailing along very pleasantly. One early morning, we passed this whaling ship.
How's that coffee doing, love?
Don't worry, it's on its way.
When there was a terrific crash against the side of the boat.
up on deck and have a look.
And we rushed out on deck to see the wild antics of a very wounded whale.
It must have hit us.
I think we're going to have to abandon ship.
We had lots of things on board, very personal things, a lot of wedding presents, various things that we were taking with us. And then when you have to abandon a boat, the difficulty is, what do you take?
Maurice and Marilyn began a routine evacuation, not realizing that they would be facing months at sea. And with no radio on board, they were unable to send a distress call before they abandoned ship.
Is that the last bag?
Yes, that's it.
Well, one of the things I had collected from the boat was the camera. And as we sat in the dinghy and the boat was obviously sinking, I started to snap off shots. I don't really think I knew what I was consciously looking at, taking shots. I just snap, snap, snap. When the boat finally went down, it was difficult to imagine what kind of environment we'd now placed ourselves into.
Our plan was to row due south, to be taken by the wind and current to the Galapagos Islands. So for 3 days and for 3 nights we rowed. We rowed and rowed and rowed. But the winds and currents were too strong for us. After 3 days we realized we'd failed and we were going to drift past the Galapagos Islands. We were afloat on an ocean covering a third of the Earth's surface. We couldn't picture it really. And around us, especially during the hot period, all there was around us was the shimmering heat of the sea, reflecting the sun back to us.
Within days, their food and water supplies were exhausted, and they turned to the sea to stay alive.
We had left the fishhooks out of our emergency pack in Panama. So Marlon evolved this brilliant idea of bending safety pins into hooks, and we used those pins to fish. And the fish became the mainstay of our diet thereafter.
It's a brilliant idea, love.
Well done. There we go. We've got something.
We've got one. Hang on, there's one here. Ah, you beauty! Get in there. It worked. It bloody worked.
Once we had discovered how to catch them with a little safety pin and string, catching the fish was not a problem, and killing the fish and gutting them was not a problem. The problem came in actually eating raw fish. But if you're very hungry, you will begin to nibble at something, and eventually, because you are hungry, you will eat it.
After about the 7th day, we saw a ship. I saw a ship that was so close. If you can picture us on the surface of the sea, the curvature of the Earth meant that our horizon was only 2 miles away. So that ship was less than 2 miles away from us.
Marilyn, give me the flares. I think there's a ship out there.
We fired our flares at it.
Here!
And it sailed on, completely ignored us.
He didn't see us.
That's the last of the flares.
It never occurred to me that we would not survive, and I always thought we would be rescued quite quickly. But when the first boat had gone past in a very few days, then I began to realise that it was very difficult for other vessels to see us.
Over the next few weeks, they passed several more ships, but none of them could spot the small raft on the horizon.
It's no use, love. Nothing's happening.
By now, the Baileys were entering an area feared by sailors for its sudden storms and unpredictable winds.
Now we had overcast skies and terrible cold, and it started to rain. And we didn't know when it would rain again, so we collected every bit we could. And we collected it off the side of the life raft, which washed all the rubberized coating off the life raft, and the water was contaminated thereafter with this rubberized coating. But it was glorious. We had this wonderful water, and we could digest our protein now.
I think we'll have to ration ourselves to half a day each from now on. Sorry.
Maurice and Marilyn had been adrift for nearly 2 months without proper provisions, and there were more serious problems ahead.
There we go. No!
What's up?
On their 50th day at sea, their dinghy was punctured.
I don't believe it. Pass me the pump. Right, can you move the oar out the way, love?
It would now take constant pumping and bailing to stay afloat while they fished for their meals. Worse yet, their life raft had also been damaged by the spines of a triggerfish.
Okay, yeah, I think it's only a...
As we sat in our life raft, we were never free of water, and gradually we developed saltwater sores that grew deeper and deeper. A thrombosis developed in my leg, and gradually that clot went round to my lung, and I inhaled it, and I coughed it out. And coughing it out, I coughed part of my lung out as well. I suppose anybody on land would have been rushed to hospital and been under intensive care in that state, but I had to endure it without any help at all.
That's it. Over you go. That's it. Here we go.
I thought, maybe this is where I'm going to die.
Listen, we're going to get out of here. We're going to get rescued. And you're going to get better.
It never occurred to me that he would die. And it was a thought that I didn't really want to think about, that I would be there on my own. We'd started this voyage together, and I was really quite determined we'd finish it together. I think the will to survive is very strong in some people and not in others. I do believe it's stronger in the female of the species rather than the male. But I didn't think that it was my time to die, and I was determined that we would survive if it was at all possible.
They had now been on the water for nearly 4 months.
Our 119th day at sea began like all the others. We fished from dawn, we consumed our fish, and then sometime in the afternoon, Marilyn roused me. She said, I can hear a ship.
Maurice, there's a boat. There's a boat out there.
I had very sharp hearing, and I did hear the sound, or the engine, the sound of an engine.
We're here!
And almost you didn't believe it, because we hadn't heard ships for quite a long time. But there was this little thump, 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 and I knew a ship was out there somewhere.
And it sailed off. And I dropped on my knees in despair. I remember saying to Marilyn, let it go on. Save your strength. This is our life now, on the sea, amongst the fishes and the birds.
It's coming back, Maurice. Maurice, it's coming back. I hear it, look.
And I looked up, and sure enough, this ship was
It's coming back.
Hello! It's seen us! It's seen us!
When we were actually rescued, we had the hardest part was climbing up the ladder up the side of the vessel. But he was rescued, so the adrenaline goes and you do it. But when we got on the deck, we hadn't been standing up or moving around for 4 months, and our leg muscles were quite wasted. And I think we more or less crawled onto the deck and just happy just to sit there on a blanket.
After 4 months at sea, Maurice and Marilyn were safe at last. No one had ever survived being adrift for so long.
We survived, I think, because we were tolerant of each other. We lived as a team. And we worked as a team. And there was nothing that embittered our relationship during that time. And I think that was the reason we survived.
But it was more than just a survival story. It was a miracle. The ocean has always been an integral part of British life, which isn't surprising considering that Great Britain is an island. And the National Maritime Museum pays special tribute to the sailors and explorers who left English soil in search of new lands and new lives. Our next story takes us near another island, Cuba, and captures on videotape a new breed of sailors who are also searching for new lives. With every launch of the space shuttle, booster rockets separate and fall into the Atlantic Ocean, where ships are waiting to salvage the debris. But during one routine mission, the crew of the Liberty Star spotted something unusual in the distance.
What time we got? 4:35.
The word spread through the crew that there were men floating in the water. I grabbed my video camera so as to document anything which may occur.
Rescue operation underway.
We launched one of our Avons with 3 of us on board. We went out to the raft and took them on board. They were talking in Spanish, so I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew almost immediately that they had to be refugees, probably from Cuba.
We carry med technicians on board because the law at sea says you take care of people as soon as you can, as best you can.
One of the guys was very sick, and when we got back to the ship, we had to lower a litter and bring him on board. And we took him into where the dive locker is. They looked rather emaciated. They were shivering. They were sunburned, they were hypothermic, but their biggest problem was they were dehydrated.
Lukewarm, not cold.
We put blankets around them, and we were giving them small amounts of Gatorade to drink.
I speak a little bit of Spanish. John Fishbeck speaks some Spanish. So we understood everything they were trying to tell us, and they understood everything we were trying to tell them.
I reassured them primarily that they were going to be safe. The third fellow was the one I was most empathetic with. As you could well imagine, he was in the worst shape. He was the most grateful.
Thank you from his heart, always. He's very emotional. He's very happy. That's okay.
He was still lucid enough to realize that this probably was his last chance.
We discussed where they were from, how long they had been at sea. They had been without water for 5 days, without food for 6 days.
We prepared food and water for 3 days. The food lasted us for only 2 days. After the 3rd day, we ran out of water.
These guys took an incredible chance coming across anything in this raft. There was no floor on it. There were just the 2 holes. so there's nowhere to sit except with your feet in the water. And they did say the sharks were after him earlier on.
You can see it was built with just very common materials that they had managed to scrounge together. It was composed of 2 truck tire inner tubes, and they were lashed together with a wooden mattress frame above and below. The rudder was built from everyday hinges, door hinges. You can even see how they had little tie-off points on the sail so that they could trim the sail.
They left the northern tip of Cuba, heading to Miami where they had friends and relatives. But they ended up off of Cape Canaveral because they got caught by the Gulf Stream. If we hadn't found them, I don't think anyone would have found them alive.
Everyone wanted to help. Everyone was very concerned about these people.
There were several of us that were putting talcum powder on their legs. They had open sores all over because they were rubbed raw from being wet and then sitting on those inner tubes day after day.
Never see us again, Bucky? Yeah, see, you'll see us again.
One of them was overcome with emotion. He tried to cry, but he was so dehydrated that no tears would form in his eyes.
In the meantime, we had contacted the Coast Guard, and their vessel, the Matagorda, had run out 20 miles. We had run in 20 miles. Of course, it was nighttime by this time. And we handed off the 2 Cubans who were able to walk. And the 3rd man was transferred via litter.
As we lowered this last fellow over, this guy waved his arm from the stretcher and said, "God bless you." And that was the last word that we heard from him. Everything was against them, and yet they made it. Which led us to another conclusion that whatever they left must have been a whole lot worse than where they were going to be, to make somebody do this.
God really saved their lives through my eyes. I honestly believe that. They were meant to be found.
Well, that's our show for now. I'd like to thank the National Maritime Museum for their cooperation, and a special thanks to everyone who shared their remarkable stories with us on It's a Miracle. It's our hope that whenever you need one, you'll find a miracle in your life, too. Until next time, I'm Richard Thomas. Goodbye.